Hello, this is HookedByHappenstance. I'm Kendra, and it is time for another installment of Yarn Tales. Today is one of those special editions where we're not going to talk about a particular book. Rather, we're going to talk about a particular shawl. Yes, I have finished shawl number 3, which is this lovely green number that I am wearing right now. If you have not been around for a while, then you may not have heard about Yarn Tales. It is my ongoing series where I am reading books in 2019 and then cataloging them in yarn shawls, basically. I am using a book Luggage system made up of silly Kendra rules to help catalog my reading for the year and help me get a bit back into the book game. And so far, it is working. It definitely helped me ramp it up. I'm in a little bit of a slump currently, but we are not talking about current books. Oh no! We're talking about books from April. And yes, it is near the end of June. But that is okay. The books, they don't go away. You can still read all the books that I'm going to talk about. So, the way that this whole thing started is I was going to make one shawl for the year. I figured I would read 12 to 15 books. And I have been gifted a number of beautiful, indie dyed and nice wool yarns. So, I blended them together to make a shawl pattern, and I figured I was going to do one for the year. Well, by the end of February, I had more than enough books, and I had filled up a full shawl's worth, so I moved on to shawl number 2, figuring that'll take me a while. Oh no, March's books made a shawl in and of themselves. So here I am in April, and I started a new shawl, and in April I actually read more than a shawl's worth of books. So, the shawl that I am wearing only covers the books that I read from April 1st to the 24th when I left for a trip. So I figured that was actually a good stopping point, and my shawl is a really nice length. Now, I have been asked if there is a pattern available for these shawls. There is not yet, because I am using a 5-star rating scale, which factors into my pattern, and the choice of patterning that I used. It is difficult for me to make a pattern that is, user-friendly on your end, because I'm taking a lot of creative liberties and fudging increases and things to make everything work. If the shawls lay flat, they're all square and such. Well, not square. They're not squares. The numbers all end up evening out, but it takes a little finagling in the interim to make that happen. So it's not like a user-friendly pattern. When I am all done with Yarn Tales for the year, I will take the things that I've learned through all the shawls as I'm making them. I'm doing slightly different shapes and sizes and configurations, trying to figure out my perfect shawl. I've already figured out 2 or 3 characteristics that are the ideal shawls for me, and things that I don't necessarily see across the board in other people's shawl patterns. So I'm honing in on the perfect shawl, which is kind of cool that this is serving multiple purposes. So once I am done with the entire year of Yarn Tales, I will come up with a pattern that is user-friendly for all y'all. So that is where that stands. What did I read in April? If you are interested, there is a playlist here on the channel that shows all the books that I have read this year. So if you'd like to catch up on anything, you can. But I thought that I would give you just a little reminder about how many books I read in April. In the month of April, between the 1st and the 24th, I read 12 books. So that brought me up to a total of 41 books for 2019. That's a lot of books, y'all. That's a lot of books. So, this shawl's worth of books, so the books from the 1st through the 24th, those 12 books, included 5 audiobooks and 7 physical books. So that was a difference for me this month. I've been leaning into having more audiobooks than physical books, in part because it allows me to do other things. And also, I've just found that I have a difficulty reading paper books. A lot of times I have a hard time tracking certain text and whatever. So I have mostly been reading ebooks when I do read physical books. But this month, I read a lot of physical books. So that was kind of cool. It was a nice change of pace, because I was starting to worry that maybe I was just going to become an audiobook reader, which, mind you, is totally fine, but I have a lot of physical books, so, it would be good if I read those too. But this month, I definitely did. I read 4 of the books for the time period I experienced with my kids. 3 of the books I decided not to finish, so I DNF'd them. And 5 of the books I enjoyed alone. So the total page equivalent, because I went through and I found out how many pages each of the books, even of the audiobooks, that way it's like an even spread between audiobooks and physical books. So I added up the pages of all those books. this shawl covers 2,230 pages of reading. And I'm pretty happy with that amount. And I have an average of 2.8 stars for the books that are in this shawl. So I thought that since I didn't fill like a whole month, so I don't want to give like month-long stats or update all the yearly stats, I'll do that at a later time. I thought that what I would actually do is go through and give you a little bit of a look back on some of the books that I've read this year. I've come up with a few things I want to talk about, like my favorite books, most recommended, that sort of thing. So I figured April's a good time to do it because it's the end of the 4th month, so we're a third of the way through the year, which gives me a pretty good overview of what I've read so far, and I have a big enough sampling to like make some educated, I don't know, commentary about what I've read. So the book during that time that I have most recommended, that I've told other people I think they should read, has been Mr. Penumbra's 24-Hour Bookstore. I can basically, unequivocally recommend that across the board. There's nothing in it that I think would be troublesome to anybody. The tone, I think, is overall friendly to all adults, teenagers, whatever. It's a very, I don't know. The masses could enjoy that book. So I recommend Mr. Penumbra's 24-Hour Bookstore by Robin Sloan. And I have recommended it to multiple family members. I don't know if anybody's actually read it yet, but I think it's a good book. Y'all should read it. The book that I personally, in my everyday life, in real life, talk about the most is An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green. Now, I don't know if that's because of anything in particular about the book. It's not like the book was so thought-provoking I can't shut up about it. It probably has a lot to do with the fact that I consume a lot of Vlogbrothers and Vlogbrothers related content and follow all the places that Hank Green makes all the things. So it comes up in reference to other things that I talk about in conversation with my family a decent amount, because a lot of the media that I consume kind of all ends up pointing back. Though I do think there are a lot of interesting points about An Absolutely Remarkable Thing to discuss, which is also why I talk about it a lot, and there's a sequel in the works, so that gets brought up a decent amount. So that is my most talked about book. The favorite book that I've read with my kids that has been included in the shawls, because we do some reading that is not involved in these shawls, but of the books that we've talked about and I've made videos about, because there are a lot of books that I've read that are middle grade, yeah, mostly middle grade. Some, I guess this kind of fall into the light YA category, but the books I've experienced with my kids. My favorite book has been Brown Girl Dreaming by Jacqueline Woodson for multiple reasons. Firstly, it is just a wonderful book. The cover is beautiful also. We listened to the audiobook, which I highly recommend. Hearing somebody's memoir in their own voice is always the best way to consume that memoir, I think, because their inflection tells you a lot about what you're reading that I might not inflect in the same way if I were to read it aloud or even in my head. So that has been really good. Also, Brown Girl Dreaming started us down this kick of books in verse, and I've read several of them this year, and I love it. It is just so amazing, and there's a couple more that I've heard have come out this year that I want to read that are adult books, which is actually kind of more interesting. I guess the closest thing in an adult book format that I've experienced was the Poet X. Had a lot. It was like written in verse. So, but yeah, my favorite book with my kids was Brown Girl Dreaming, and they bring it up in conversation, and we had multiple conversations about it, you know, a long time after the book, and that is what I'm really looking for in books that you read with your kids, is good stuff that they can reference back to and find the connections with their everyday life, like without being asked. And so I think that's the way to, like, you know, breed good readers, is to teach them to read deeply and like internalize a lot of the good things out of the books. And Brown Girl Dreaming has a lot of good things to internalize. Then my favorite book. I was trying to decide my favorite book of this 4 months has been, and I kept coming up with 2. And I realized that I liked them for 2 different reasons. So I was going to just stick with 2, because I have more than 2 5-star books. But my 2 favorite books that I've read so far. The first one is a book that I have heard so much hype about and everybody loved. And I was really worried I was going to read it and not like it, because that's like the worst, when you have this big build-up, like, oh, it's going to be so good. And you read it, you're like, meh. And I've had a few of those. But Eliza and Her Monsters by Francesca Zappia was so good. It was so good. It was such a good book. I really, really enjoyed the experience of reading it. I enjoyed the story. I want to read it again. But again, we are not yet to the point of rereading all the books. I do reread soon. But that's I'll talk about that when it's relevant. But we're not to the point of rereading. Rereading will come later. And my other favorite book is a book that I had never heard of, would have never considered, and found purely based on a readathon. Because I was looking for a buzzword and just kind of walking the shelves of my digital library with my swipey finger, I just walked right up and found When It Happens to You by Molly Ringwald. A book that I would never have picked because I think there's frequently a lot of hype around authors who are otherwise famous. And so unless I follow that person and have followed the journey of the book being written, I don't necessarily like jump onto those kind of books. But it was the only one I could find at the time that had the word when in the title that sounded remotely interesting. Turned out I loved this book. I loved the way that it looked at some of the characters, the way that it handled some of the issues. One of my major hang-ups in books is cheating. I really don't like cheating in books because I frequently feel like it's treated like it's nothing. There's never any consequences. For the most part, it's like a plot device, and I think cheating sucks. And so I don't think that that should be something that is treated so lightly in books, because I think that the things that are treated lightly and the things that we read start to get like ingrained. Again, that reading deeply and getting like kind of having the words written on your soul about what you're reading. If you read a lot of books where there's a lot of cheating and it's just accepted, you will start to think that is okay. And it's not okay for people to treat you poorly in any sense. So you have to stand up for yourself and like not put up with crap. So I really liked this book had consequences. Does that mean that things, you know, turn out horribly for the cheater? Not always, because in real life that doesn't happen either. But there are consequences for your actions. And I feel like When It Happens to You covered consequences really well, and also just dealt really well with a lot of difficult situations that people might deal with, and made you think about how you might deal with them if you were in those situations. So I really liked that book. So those were kind of an overview of the last few months. It was fun to you know, flip back through my notebooks and take a little look at the books that I've written. It's real hot right now for a shawl, y'all. Especially a shawl made out of wool. But I guess I'll give you a closer glimpse of this one. It is made primarily in green, was my inspiration for it. The first yarn that I picked was this one, which is called The Waist. It is a cattails yarn. This whole shawl is DK weight yarns. So the waist colorway, which has a lot of browns in it. So when I was matching other yarns to it, some of those tones came out too. So the waist was cattails. Then this green up here is Lolo Did It on the simple DK base, and this is called Tea on the Green. And it has like pops of like a goldish orange in it also, which ties in nicely. And then this super vibrant green color is another cattails yarn. That is called Green Man, also a DK. And then a little bit of the fourth color I ended up using, which is this brown. It's called Bourbon. That is also a Lolo Did It yarn. And then there's a smattering of beads in here. They are mostly all the same kind. They're mostly this like seed bead in some different greens and golds and oranges and a few blacks, because that was what I had in stash, because I have a lot of beads in stash. Most of them don't have holes big enough to fit DK yarn through to crochet, either in the method, which I prefer to use, where you use the crochet hook to pull the yarn through the bead, or even if you string them in advance, which you can get a thicker yarn through the hole if you do the stringing technique than you can with the pull the hook through technique, from what I have found. But I used those. I also have, there's some in here. I thought I had some metal ones. Oh yeah, I have some metal ones. There's some gold metal ones right there. Yeah, so overall, this is a fun shawl. I expected, and worthy of noting, it to grow more top to bottom when I blocked it. I'm actually glad that it didn't, because I really like its length, but I had expected more growth that way. However, I got more growth the long way, which I also don't dislike. It's a little drapey right now because I'm not wearing clothes that will hold it up because there's nothing on my shoulders, but I think that during the fall and winter when I'm wearing something that has more fabric for it to cling to, it'll stay up nicer. I've also considered putting a button on it because I really like the way that it fits in a cape style. Like, it fits just really nice around the neckline. So that is probably gonna happen. And yeah, I'm playing with some of the dimensions of this to make some other things because I do enjoy some things about it. So this has been a very interesting process for me, not only in my reading but in my designing, because I'm kind of unintentionally making a whole bunch of designs along the way, and it's a nice way to test things out. Like, this is like my little playground to test things, because right now these shawls are just for me. So if I make a mess of them and have to find my way out of it, it doesn't hurt anybody else, and it's not delaying anything for anybody but myself. So I am thoroughly enjoying it, and hopefully you've been enjoying these videos. I know there's been a lot of them, but there's been a break, so y'all could catch up. There will be more coming, though overall my reading it peaked. There's going to be a bunch coming out here coming up, and then it has slowed down some. I'm hoping it will pick back up, but if it doesn't, being in the 40 or 50 book range for the year, I think is a very admirable achievement compared to how many books I've read in the last couple of years. So I won't be too angry, but I am still on track. I think when I did the math, I've still read over 2 books a week for the year. So who knows where we'll end up? We're just going on this ride. It's a journey. If you would like to catch up on all of the stops on that journey, all the chapters of my shawls, like I said, there is a playlist here on the channel, and also a playlist of the Yarn Tales videos I did last year, which was a different setup, but a similar thing as far as talking about books. So if you want to hear me talk about books, there's lots of books to be talked about, and lots of books to be experienced. If you have anything that you'd like to recommend to me specifically, based on the taste that you know that I have, go ahead and leave them below, because I'm looking for some more books. And I will see you all next time. Bye!